The violet sky of Yovel Prime hung heavy over the city like an old bruise. It was beautiful once, the kind of beauty poets used to write about in the Alliance. Now that beauty felt wrong, like a painting left out in the rain. The silver plains beyond the city were scorched and broken, littered with the black husks of machines and the bones of the dead. The Vorath swarm had arrived 3 years ago. They came without warning, their hive ships falling from the clouds like burning meteors. At first, the people of Yovel Prime thought the Alliance fleet would protect them. But the Vorath were endless. For every swarm ship destroyed, another 2 took its place. For every insectoid warrior burned down by defensive fire, 10 more crawled over its corpse. The siege lines were drawn quickly. The Vorath encircled the city with their living walls, vast mounds of black chitin, where soldiers burrowed and hatched. At night, those mounds glowed with faint green light as the creatures stirred. Every week, the sound of their war drums echoed across the plains, followed by an attack somewhere along the defenses. Inside the city, food was scarce. Power grids failed more often than they worked. Water purification plants ran on emergency backups. The people had stopped asking when the siege would end. Now, they only asked how much longer they could hold on. General Sci-Fi stood on the highest balcony of the command tower, his scaled hands resting on the railing. His people were a reptilian race from the hot deserts of Kairos, built for endurance. But even he felt the slow, grinding exhaustion of the years. His armor plates had dulled, his once bright crest now faded. From here, he could see the horizon. The Vorath lines stretched in an unbroken circle, marked by flickering green fires. Between the city and that line lay a no-man's land of craters, broken vehicles, and dried blood. His aide, a thin, four-eyed Yeveni officer, stepped quietly beside him. "Sir, scouts report another Vorath build-up in Sector 12. It may be another push at the walls." Sithal did not turn his head. His voice was quiet, almost distant. "And what strength remains there?" "2 companies," the aide replied, "mostly volunteers. They have less than 100 functioning rifles." The general closed his eyes briefly. "Then when the push comes, they will be slaughtered." Silence settled between them. It was a silence that had been heard too many times. The silence of leaders who had no more good answers to give. After a moment, the aide spoke again, more hesitantly. "There are rumors, sir." Sithal finally looked at him. "What kind of rumors?" "Of a ship. Small, not Vorath. It broke through the blockade 2 days ago, some say. It carries warriors from Sol." The name felt strange in the general's mouth. Sol. That minor system the council debated admitting into the Alliance. "I thought their only world was Earth." "Yes. The Death World." "Yes," the aide said, lowering his voice. "The Xenobiology Guild classified it as Class 5 hostile. Gravity higher than most species can endure. Weather unpredictable. Native predators dangerous even to sapient life." Sithal frowned. "And their people? What of them?" "They say," the aide began, "that humans survive by fighting their world every day. They say their muscles are forged in heavier gravity, their reflexes sharpened by constant danger. Some call them Deathworlders." The general almost laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "We do not need stories. We need fleets, and fleets do not come in single ships." "Still," the aide said softly, "this one has come, and its crew. They have requested to join the defense." Sithal's eyes narrowed. "To join a handful of untested newcomers against the swarm. They insist they have fought sieges before, on their own world." The general turned back to the horizon, watching the faint lights of the Vorath nests. For a long moment, he said nothing. His mind weighed the situation. The city's defenses were crumbling, his soldiers weary, the Alliance silent. And somewhere, out there, a strange, unwanted ship from a dangerous, faraway world was waiting to dock. "Let them through," he said at last. The aide's eyes widened. "Sir, Sethal's voice was low and hard. If they die, it will cost us nothing. If they fight, perhaps they will buy us another day. Another day, that was all he could hope for now. One more day before the Vorith came again, far away, in the darkness beyond the blockade. The small human corvette adjusted its course toward the city. Its hull was scorched, its paint chipped, but its engines burned bright. Inside, warriors from the blue world called Earth checked their weapons, their faces lit by the cold light of space. They had come a very long way, and unlike the rest of the galaxy, they were not afraid of the word siege. The city was restless. Whispers moved faster than official orders, weaving through market ruins, hospital wards, and dim barracks. Soldiers spoke of it over cold rations. Medics murmured about it as they stitched wounds. Even the children, hiding in underground shelters, repeated the strange word, Deathworlders. No one was sure where the rumor had started. Some said it came from a scout who had seen the human ship breach the blockade. Others claimed it was an old soldier's tale, dusted off to give the people hope. But the idea spread because hope was rare, and the thought of someone, powerful enough to change the siege, was like water to the thirsty. General Setho heard the murmur everywhere he went. When he passed wounded troops in the infirmary, they looked up at him not for orders, but for confirmation. Was it true? Were there warriors from a world so harsh it had shaped them into living weapons? The truth was, Sethel didn't know. He had read the brief alliance files on humans when their system first contacted the Council. Sol was a backwater star, unremarkable except for the strange hostility of its only inhabited world, Earth. Higher gravity than most species could endure comfortably. A biosphere swarming with predators, venomous creatures, and deadly plants. Weather patterns so violent that entire cities had been erased by storms or earthquakes. The file had been dry, clinical. But one line had stayed with him. Human civilization evolved, not in spite of its hostile environment, but because of it. Now those same humans were approaching his dying city, in the War Council chamber. His senior officers stood in a circle around the holographic map. Blue light showed the city's crumbling defenses. Red lines showed the encircling Vorath forces. Pressing closer each week. They cannot help us, hissed Commander Ralvek, a lean, long-limbed amphibian, whose voice carried a constant edge of fear. One small ship against a swarm. It is nothing. Colonel Shira, a six-eyed mammal from the cold moons of Vathar, spoke next. Perhaps nothing, but perhaps something. Sir, morale is low. If the people believe these Deathworlders are fierce enough to help, that belief may keep them fighting. Sethal's gaze swept over them. Belief will not hold the walls. Flesh and steel will. And from what I have seen, humans have neither in quantity. Then why allow them through? Ralvek challenged. The general's voice was calm. Because even the smallest blade can cut, if it is sharp enough. And if the rumors are true, these humans have been sharpened by a lifetime of survival. That evening, as the suns dipped low and painted the sky in bruised purple, the sound of engines echoed faintly over the city. People looked up, soldiers paused mid-step, civilians pressed to the railings of broken balconies. The human ship came in low, its hull scarred and pitted from dozens of battles. Its design was nothing like the sleek, perfect craft of the advanced Alliance fleets. Instead, it was all angles and plates, bolted together like armor over bone. Dark scorch marks ran along its sides, and one of its wings bore a crude white emblem, a circle with a jagged line through it. It did not glide like other ships. It roared. The engine screamed as if daring the atmosphere to try and stop them. When it landed in the central hangar, the city's defense officers lined the walkway. General Sethal was there, flanked by guards. He had expected something different, larger, perhaps, more intimidating. The airlock hissed open. One by one, the humans stepped out. There were 12 of them, wearing armor that didn't match. Some pieces looked military issue, others clearly homemade. The metal was scratched, dented, patched with strips of some flexible dark material. Their weapons were heavy, ugly things, built for function over beauty. The one in front, tall, broad-shouldered, with short dark hair, carried his rifle in one hand, as if it weighed nothing. His eyes scanned the hangar in quick, sharp movements, taking in every angle. He stopped in front of Cethal. "Commander Jocks Mercer," he said, his voice even and steady. "We're here to fight." The general studied him. "You came through a blockade to die in a siege." Mercer didn't smile. "We came through a blockade because someone's killing civilians and burning cities. That's reason enough." Sitho's crest twitched. "You understand the situation here. The Voroth have held us for 3 years. Entire Alliance fleets failed to break their lines." Mercer's reply was quiet, but there was a steel edge in it. "On our world, 3 years is how long it can take to win a war." Later, in the dim light of the barracks, the humans unpacked their gear. Cethal watched from the doorway as they worked quickly, efficiently, almost wordlessly. Their armor was dented, but every plate was repaired. Their rifles were cleaned with care, but modified with strange attachments no Alliance officer would approve. He noticed something else. They laughed. Low, tired laughter. The kind that came from people who had already been through hell and learned to make light of it. In the corner, a young alien. The morning air over Sector 12 was cold and bitter. Thin mist clung to the ground, curling between the shattered walls and craters. Far beyond, the Vorath siege line was a jagged silhouette against the pale sky, dark spires, moving shapes, and the faint, rhythmic beat of their war drums. Commander Jocks Mercer stood at the edge of the outer trench, helmet under his arm, scanning the ground between the city and the enemy. The no man's land was a graveyard, rusted vehicle frames, shattered defense turrets, and the remains of both Voroth and Alliance soldiers. Beside him, General Sethal's scaled hands rested on the railing. "Sector 12 falls every time they attack," the general said flatly. "It is too exposed, too open. You asked for our worst position. This is it." Mercer's eyes moved slowly across the trench line. "Good. That means they'll expect it to break again." Cethal's crest twitched with irritation. "You speak as if you want them to attack you." The human finally looked at him. "I do." The humans moved into the trenches with quiet purpose. They didn't just take positions, they changed them. Private tools appeared from their packs, compact drills, spools of wire, small cutting torches. They deepened, firing holes, shifted sandbags, and placed strange devices along the walls. The alien soldiers who had held this sector before watched with confusion. One of them, a green-skinned Falori sharpshooter, finally asked, "What are you doing?" "Making this place a problem," replied Sergeant Ava Serrano, without looking up from where she was wiring something into the mud. The Falori tilted his head. "The Voroth will come with hundreds. You can't stop that." Ava gave a short, sharp smile. "We don't need to stop them all, just enough to make the rest think twice." By midday, the preparations were done. The humans checked their rifles, adjusted their armor, and took their positions. They spoke little, but their movements were calm. No nervous pacing, no glances toward the rear, as if preparing to retreat. In the command post, Cethal watched through a field scope. He had seen soldiers brace for battle before, usually with clenched jaws and tense shoulders. The humans looked different, relaxed, almost, as if they were not walking into danger, but into something they already understood. The first signs of the attack came with a distant chittering. It was a sound like 1,000 knives scraping over stone, carried on the wind. The alien troops stiffened. The humans only shifted slightly, checking ammo counters and tightening straps. Then the drums began. The Voroth emerged from their siege line in a black tide, limbs glinting, jaws clicking. Their armor caught the pale light as they ran, each movement perfectly in sync with the others. From the trench, the alien soldiers' hands trembled on their weapons. One muttered, "Too many. Far too many." Ava's voice cut through, sharp and steady. "Pick a target, breathe, shoot." The first human shots cracked through the air, loud, deep, and fast. Their rifles were not sleek like Alliance pulse weapons. They were brutal, kicking hard with every shot. But each round hit with bone-breaking force, punching through Vorath's armor. The aliens fired too, but their lines wavered under the pressure. Vorath Bodhi slammed into the trench walls, clawing and biting. A massive warrior leaped the barricade, roaring only to be met by Mercer himself, who slammed into its shoulder first, driving a short blade under its jaw. The fight became chaos. Smoke filled the air, mixing with the green mist from the Vorath's ichor. Humans shouted to each other over the noise. Quick, clear commands. Left side. Two incoming. Mine's hot. Get down. Reloading. Cover me. Every movement was purposeful. When a Vorath breached the line, the humans didn't pull back. They met it head-on, forcing it into close combat where its size meant. Less knives flashed. Rifle stock smashed into chitin. Boots drove into joints until they cracked, and then a deep, thudding hump shook the trench. One of the small devices Ava had planted earlier went off, a pressure trigger mine buried in the mud. The blast tore through a Vorath cluster, sending the survivors scrambling sideways, breaking their perfect formation. The humans pounced on that gap, rifles roaring, forcing the swarm to stumble back step by step. From the command post, C could hardly believe what he saw. This was not a battle. It was a hunt. The humans fought with the intensity of predators, using every inch of ground, every moment of hesitation. After 2 hours, the Vorath pulled back, their chittering fading into the distance. The trench was a wreck, smoke, bodies, scattered, debris, but it still stood. Sector 12 had not fallen. Mercer stood at the top of the trench, rifle resting on his shoulder, watching the enemy retreat. His face was streaked with dirt and Vorath blood, but his breathing was steady. Sethel approached him slowly. "I expected to see you overrun." Mercer shrugged. "They'll come again." "That's fine. You want them too?" the general asked, baffled. The human's eyes were calm and cold. "The more they come here, the less they hit the other sectors. We can hold. You just have to let us." For a long moment, Sethal said nothing. He had commanded armies for decades, but he had never seen soldiers like these. There was something dangerous about them, not just their strength, but the way they seemed to thrive inside the fight. As he walked back toward the command tower, he realized the rumors were wrong. The humans weren't dangerous because they came from a death world. They were dangerous because they had brought the death world with them. 2 days passed after the battle in Sector 12. The Vorath did not attack again, but no one believed. It was mercy. The swarm never stopped. They only waited to strike harder. From the walls, the enemy line looked restless. Vorath spires bristled with movement. Black armored shapes scuttled along the ridges, their chittering carrying on the wind. In the distance, green warfires burned brighter, their glow reflecting in the mist. General Sethel stood in the command tower, staring at the tactical display. "They are building for a full assault," he said. "Sector 12 will be their target again." Commander Jocks Mercer was standing nearby, arms crossed, helmet clipped to his belt. "Good," he said simply. Sithel gave him a sharp look. "Good. You know they will come in greater numbers than before. Hundreds, perhaps thousands." "That's the point," Mercer replied. "If they throw everything at us, we can break them. We just have to make them want to." The humans went back to the trenches that afternoon. The alien troops stationed there expected them to reinforce defenses, but instead, they began to weaken certain points, moving sandbags, leaving narrow gaps, setting up false cover that would collapse under weight. One Falori sharpshooter frowned as Ava Serrano deliberately loosened part of the barricade. Why would you leave it open? That's madness. It's bait, Ava said, not looking up. They see an opening. They rush in, and when they do, she gestured toward a cluster of small devices buried just behind the gap. Boom. They worked quietly, laying traps, planting mines, and marking invisible firing zones. The humans' plan was simple. Let the Vorith think they were breaking through, then punish them for trying. That night, the sky above the city turned black with storm clouds. Cold rain began to fall, turning the dirt into slick mud. To most soldiers, the weather was a curse. Wet armor, slippery footing, poor visibility. To the humans, it was perfect. Mercer stood at the center of the trench line, rain running down his face. This will slow their charge, he told his squad, and cover our movements. Stay low, fire on my mark. And remember, don't kill them all at once. Let the rest think they can win. They checked their weapons, each movement methodical. Even in the downpour, their rifles stayed dry under improvised covers. Knives were strapped to thighs, grenades tucked close at hand. The attack came at dawn. The war drums boomed so loud, they rattled the trench walls. The ground trembled under the weight of the Vorath charge. Their warriors poured over the horizon in a black wave, green eyes glowing in the half-light. Alien soldiers along the trench tensed, some whispering prayers. The humans crouched low, calm as predators waiting for prey to come close enough to strike. When the first Vorath reached the outer barricades, the humans still didn't fire. They let the enemy crawl over the edges, tearing into the false cover. The barricade collapsed under their weight, exactly as planned, dropping them into a shallow pit lined with buried explosives. Mercer's hand came up. Now, the trench erupted with gunfire. Harsh, thunderous human rifles cut through the Vorath ranks, each shot tearing armor apart. Mines detonated in deafening bursts, sending dirt and chitin flying. Ava's voice cut through the noise, left flank moving to clusters. On it, Mercer swung his rifle, dropping targets in quick bursts. The enemy surged again, filling the air with their screeches. Some reached the trench line, clambering over the walls. But every time one broke through, a human met them head-on. Knives flashed, boots struck joints, and rifles fired point-blank. A Vorith warrior lunged at Mercer, claws outstretched. He stepped into the attack, twisting under the blow, and drove a short blade deep under its armored neck. With a shove, the creature toppled back into the mud. From the command post, General Seathal watched the chaos unfold. At first it looked like madness, the humans allowing the enemy so close. But as the battle went on, he saw the pattern. Every Vorath advance funneled into the same killing zones. Every breach met with a counterattack so fast it left no time for the enemy to regroup. The humans weren't just holding the line, they were shaping the battle. Rain stopped by morning, but the battlefield was still wet and heavy with the smell of death. Puddles reflected the shattered barricades. The black ichor of fallen Vorath swirling in the water. The alien defenders began repairing the walls, but the humans weren't resting. Commander Jacques Mercer stood in the war room, leaning over a holographic map. His finger traced a red line deep into enemy territory. "We've been holding the line for too long," he said. "The Vorith will keep coming unless we take the fight to them. We need to hit them where it hurts." General Seathal's crest twitched in concern. "You're talking about a strike into their spire zone. That's suicide." Mercer didn't look up. "Not suicide. Precision. We're not marching an army, just a team. Fast, quiet, in and out before they know we're there." The target was a Vorath supply hub, 3 kilometers beyond the walls, hidden inside a cluster of spires. The intel came from captured enemy maps, massive stockpiles of fuel, weapons, and breeding pods. Destroying it wouldn't end the siege, but it would slow the swarm for weeks. Mercer chose 5 humans for the mission: Ava Serrano, Reyes, Holloway, Carter, and himself. Each carried light gear, suppressed rifles, knives, explosives, and just enough rations for one night. At dusk, they slipped out through a drainage tunnel under the walls. The alien guards watched them go, with wide, silent eyes, unsure if they'd ever see the humans again. The land beyond the walls was a wasteland, burnt. Trees stood like black spears in the mud. Pools of stagnant water rippled with strange oily colors. The air smelled of rot and the faint metallic temps of Vorath chemicals. Every few hundred meters, twisted metal spikes jutted from the ground, the remains of past battles. The humans moved like shadows, avoiding open ground. Ava led them through gullies and under fallen beams, pausing often to scan the horizon. The sound of distant drums echoed faintly, carried on the wind. They spoke little. Words were dangerous here. By midnight, they reached the edge of the spire zone. The Vorath structures loomed like towers of black bone, jagged and wet with slime. Green light pulsed faintly from cracks in the surface. Reyes crouched behind a ridge, peering through his scope. 2 guards at the main entrance. More movement on the left flank. No way we're getting close without a distraction. Mercer's eyes narrowed. We make our own. They moved silently around to the rear of the nearest spire, where a tangle of pipes ran into the ground. Carter planted a small charge. When it blew, the detonation was small but sharp, sending a hiss of steam and foul-smelling gas into the air. The guards rushed toward the noise. The humans slipped past the entrance unseen. Inside, the spire was worse. The walls were alive, pulsing faintly, as though they were part muscle, part stone. The air was thick and humid, filled with the clicking of unseen creatures. They crept deeper until they reached the central chamber. Stacks of black crates were piled high, each stamped with the Vorath insignia. At the far end, massive pods hung from the ceiling, faintly glowing. Holloway's voice was a whisper. Breeding pods, hundreds of them. Mercer's jaw tightened. Set the charges. Every pod, every crate. We burn it all. They moved quickly, attaching explosives and running det cord along the walls. Ava paused at one pod, staring at the faint movement inside. A half-formed Vorath twitched in its cocoon. For a moment, she thought of the children back inside the walls, and her hands worked faster. Halfway through planting charges, Carter froze. We've got company. From the shadows, Vorath warriors emerged, larger than the ones they fought at the trenches. Their armor plated and ridged. Their eyes glowed brighter, and their claws were stained with something dark. Mercer's voice was low but sharp. Fall back to the entrance. Keep them at range. Gunfire ripped through the chamber. Suppressed shots cracked, each one dropping a warrior, but more kept coming. The sound of clicking claws and shrill screeches echoed off the living walls. Reyes tossed a grenade down a side tunnel. The blast lit the spire green for a heartbeat. Slowing the enemy's advance, they reached the entrance, but more Vorath poured in from outside. Mercer made the call. Detonate now. The charges went off in a chain of thunderclaps. The shock wave threw them to the ground. Heat and green fire roared through the spire, tearing it apart from within. The breeding pods burst like overripe fruit, the stockpiles igniting in massive bursts. The Vorath screams cut through the roar, then fell silent. The humans staggered out into the night, coughing from the smoke. Behind them, the spire burned like a black torch, its green light flickering in the dark sky. They didn't stop to admire the destruction. The blast would draw every Vorath in the region. They ran, slipping through mud and shadow, not daring to rest until the city walls came into sight. Hours later, as they approached the gate, alien guards stared in disbelief. The humans were soaked, filthy, and bruised, but alive. Seathal himself met them at the tunnel mouth. His voice was quiet. The horizon glows with green fire. That was your doing. Mercer only nodded. Consider it a message. That night, from the walls, they watched the distant blaze, still burning. The Voreth would come back, and when they did, they would be angry. But for now, the humans had struck the first real blow of the war, and everyone in the city, alien or human, could feel it. The siege had shifted. The next morning, the air was heavy and strange. The usual distant clicks and screeches of the Voreth had gone silent. The defenders on the walls shifted uneasily, their eyes scanning the horizon. Ava stood with her rifle, feeling the quiet pressing in on her. "It's too still," she muttered. "Commander." Mercer joined her, his face grim. "They're not gone. They're gathering." He was right. By midday, the sound began, a deep, rolling rumble that grew and grew until the ground trembled under their boots. From the haze of the wasteland, shapes emerged, not dozens, not hundreds, thousands. The Voreth came in endless waves, their armored bodies glinting in the pale sun. Behind them rose towering siege beasts, massive, insect-like creatures with carapaces as thick as tank armor. Mounted on their backs were spiked cannons that hissed green smoke. General Sethal's crest flattened in fear. "They bring the behemoths. We have never turned them back." Mercer's voice cut through the fear. "Then it's time you learned how humans fight when we have no choice." The Voreth charged. The first impact shook the walls as the behemoths slammed into the outer barricades. Wooden supports splintered, metal bent. Voreth warriors swarmed the base, climbing over one another in their frenzy. From the parapets, defenders opened fire. Alien energy rifles hummed. Human bullets cracked. Explosions lit the ground in flashes of orange and green. Ava sighted down, her rifle, and fired, each shot dropping a Voreth mid-climb. Reyes manned a heavy machine gun, its barrel glowing from the heat. "They just keep coming," he shouted over the roar. Then the behemoth's cannons fired. Green plasma slammed into the walls, melting stone and spraying shards like shrapnel. Defenders screamed and fell. One section of the wall sagged dangerously. "Patch it," Mercer ordered, and teams of aliens ran forward with metal plating, welding under fire. Humans covered them, pouring bullets into the swarm. Sethal watched in shock. The humans did not stay safe behind the lines. They leaned over the walls, firing into the enemy at close range, even as claws reached for them. Hours passed. The sun dipped low, staining the sky red. The Voreth never stopped. In the southern sector, a behemoth broke through the outer barricade. It charged straight for the main gate, crushing defenders under its massive legs. Mercer and Ava rushed to intercept, dragging crates of explosives behind them. They waited until the beast was almost on top of them, its mandibles opening wide. Then they lit the charges and hurled them under its belly. The blast threw both humans to the ground. The behemoth screamed, green blood pouring from its wounds, before it collapsed with a crash that shook the earth. By nightfall, the city was burning in places. Smoke filled the air, stinging eyes and choking lungs. The defenders fought on the walls, in the streets, even inside buildings, as Voreth breached small gaps. Holloway and Carter held the East Street, laying tripwires and mines. Each blast lit the night, tearing through advancing lines. Alien civilians carried ammunition to the fighters, their fear replaced by a desperate determination. Ava found herself fighting alongside Sethal's warriors, back to back in the chaos. She could hear the alien's labored breathing, but also his fierce growl as he cut down a Voreth with a sweeping strike. "You humans," he panted, "are mad." "Maybe," Ava said, reloading, "but we're still standing." The Voreth pushed harder as the night deepened. It was clear they meant to break the city in a single, unstoppable wave. Mercer gathered his team and a group of alien sharpshooters on the north wall. From there, they could see the enemy commander's larger Voreth, with glowing spines, standing behind the front lines, directing the swarm. "That's our target," Mercer said. Cut off the head, the body stumbles. In the middle of battle, they began picking them off, one by one. Each fallen commander sent confusion rippling through that section of the swarm. Slowly, the advance faltered. By the hour before dawn, the Vorath assault slowed. The ground outside the walls was carpeted with their dead. The surviving warriors pulled back, dragging their wounded with them. The behemoths lay still, black smoke rising from their ruined bodies. The defenders stood on the walls in stunned silence. No one cheered. They were too tired, too. Dawn broke with a silver haze, hiding the battered city in a thin veil of mist. The streets still stank of smoke and blood. The walls were scarred, and trenches filled with mud and debris. But the defenders moved like soldiers reborn. They had survived the night, and now the Vorath would feel the cost. Commander Jocks Mercer gathered his team on the roof of the northern wall. His face was tired, streaked with soot and blood, but his eyes were sharp. We don't wait for them to come to us anymore. We take the fight to their lines. Ava Serrano checked her rifle, nodding. They'll expect us to hold. They won't expect an attack. Mercer's lips curved into the faintest of smiles. Exactly. Surprise is our best weapon. General. Seathal approached from the command tower, his scaled hands resting on the railing. You're planning a raid outside the walls. Hundreds of Vorath still patrol the plains. This is dangerous, even for humans. Mercer looked him in the eye. The entire alliance has been under siege for 3 years. Today, we changed the game. You can watch, or you can fight alongside us. Seathal's crest twitched. For the first time he saw a glimmer of something he had long thought absent from humans. Fearless confidence, born from survival itself. The humans assembled a strike team of 30 volunteers, a mix of human warriors and the most reliable alien soldiers. They moved quietly through the ruined streets, slipping past patrols and broken machinery. Their goal, a Vorath command post 2 kilometers beyond the walls, where enemy officers directed attacks. The terrain was treacherous, mud, debris, and skeletal remnants of destroyed machines slowed their progress. A distant drum of Vorath war signals echoed, warning of danger. But the humans thrived here, moving low, scanning constantly, listening to every subtle sound. This is why you trained us, Holloway whispered to a young alien sharpshooter. Every step, every shadow, every mistake costs lives. Make them count. The alien nodded, awe mixing with fear. These humans fought differently, not with brute force alone, but with precision, patience, and calculation. They reached the edge of the Vorath forward zone, just as dusk painted the horizon. Orange shadows stretched long, and the enemy was busy reinforcing trenches from earlier losses. The humans split into 3 groups. Mercer's team would attack the command post. Ava's would block reinforcements. The third would plant explosives too, create chaos behind enemy lines. The first shots were silent, suppressed rifles, taking down patrols before alarms could sound. Move, Mercer whispered, leading his team through shattered walls and twisted pipes. The command post loomed. Ahead, a massive spire of black chitin, bristling with green lights inside. Vorath officers barked orders, unaware of the approaching humans. The team entered through a ventilation shaft, dropping silently into the control chamber. The humans struck like shadows. Ava tossed smoke grenades into the courtyard, blinding guards. Holloway and Carter cleared hallways, disarming traps and setting explosives. Mercer faced the Vorath officer in the command room, larger, stronger, covered in scarred armor. The fight was close and brutal. The Vorath officer struck with claws that could tear through metal, but Mercer anticipated every move. Using his opponent's momentum, he twisted and slammed him into the wall, then delivered a precise strike to disable the creature. The other humans completed their objectives. Explosives detonated outside the post, sending fire and smoke across. The Vorath lines. Enemy soldiers scattered, confusion spreading like wildfire. From the walls, Sethal watched in disbelief. The Vorath were retreating in disorder. The humans had turned the siege upside down. Mercer's team signaled the retreat. They slipped back through the shadows, moving as swiftly and quietly as they had arrived. Their path was lined with chaos, smoke, fire, and stunned enemy soldiers, but not a single member of the team was lost. By the time they returned to the safety of the walls, night had fallen. The city was quiet, yet alive. Fires burned in distant spires, but the Vorath no longer held confidence. Inside the command tent, the humans gathered with Sethal and his senior officers. Reports came in from alien units stationed around the city. Enemy patrols were retreating. Supplies had been destroyed, and morale among the Vorath was faltering. Ava cleaned her rifle, speaking softly. We gave them a taste of their own medicine. Mercer's gaze swept the horizon, watching the faint glimmer of green lights retreating into the distance. This is only the beginning. They'll regroup, they'll attack again. But they won't expect humans to take the fight to them. Not like this. Sethal's voice was low, almost reverent. I underestimated you. All of you. Humanity survives not because it is stronger, but because it refuses to surrender. You adapt, you strike, you endure. Mercer nodded, tired but resolute. That's what being from a death world teaches you. Survival is a strategy, not a hope. That night, the defenders slept little. The humans patrolled the walls, listening, watching, always ready. The city was still under siege, but something had changed. For the first time in 3 years, hope felt tangible. Children whispered about the humans in the streets. Soldiers told tales of their bravery. Even the Vorath would remember this day. The day when humans stepped out of the city and reminded the galaxy why Earthlings were called Deathworlders. And Mercer, staring out at the horizon, thought of the long fight still ahead. The war was far from over, but humanity had shown the galaxy what it could do, and sometimes that was enough to turn the tide. The night before the assault was silent. Too silent. The city seemed to hold its breath. Every soldier, human and alien alike, waiting for the inevitable. Fires burned low in the distance, casting long shadows across broken walls. Commander Jocks Mercer walked the parapets with Ava Serrano. They'll hit us hard, he said quietly. Everything they have left. Ava tightened her gloves. We've done worse and survived. He nodded. This isn't about surviving. It's about ending the siege before the next wave breaks us. Dawn came pale and gray. The Vorath were coming, and this time there was no hesitation. The horizon, blackened with their numbers. Not just soldiers, but behemoths, siege engines, and flying drones that buzzed like angry hornets. The drums of war rolled across the plains, shaking the ground. The humans, spread along the walls and in the trenches, held their positions. Their alien allies braced beside them, faces tense but inspired. Sethal approached Mercer. They have learned from our last attacks. They will not underestimate us this time. Mercer's eyes narrowed. Then we make them regret it. The first wave crashed against the walls in a tidal wave of chitin and claws. Vorath warriors poured over the barricades, slamming into soldiers with unstoppable force. Ava fired from the parapet, dropping to Vorath mid-leap. Beside her, Holloway's rifle barked repeatedly. Each shot was precise, each impact devastating. Hold your line, Mercer shouted, moving from sector to sector, directing reinforcements, patching gaps in the defense. The alien soldiers marveled at the humans' speed and courage. Unlike anyone they had seen, the humans didn't cower or retreat. They adapted, turning the enemy's momentum against itself, creating small pockets of devastation wherever the Vorath pressed. Hours passed in a blur of fire and screams. The Vorath advanced relentlessly, their siege engines smashing into walls, their behemoths tearing through barricades. For every one that fell, another rose in its place. Mercer called Ava to his side. We hit their command cluster. If we destroy it, we fracture their coordination. Ava's jaw tightened. We'll need to move fast. The humans gathered a strike team, slipping through mud and rubble, moving along side streets and collapsed structures to avoid detection. Their alien companions followed, trusting their instincts to guide them through the chaos. They reached the command cluster, a massive spire in the middle of the Vorath encampment. Explosives had been packed by Holloway and Carter. The guards were numerous, larger, and more alert than before. Mercer signaled. Smoke grenades erupted, shrouding their approach. Ava took a flank, picking off guards silently. Holloway planted the charges, while Mercer and Carter held off Vorath warriors with brutal efficiency. Set it, Mercer ordered. Holloway's fingers moved quickly. The charges were armed, ready to detonate. They slipped back into cover as the first grenades exploded outside, drawing attention. The blast shook the horizon. The Vorath command spire collapsed in a cloud of black chitin and green fire. The tremor rattled walls and trenches. Enemy formations faltered as communication lines burned and leaders were killed or scattered. From the city walls, Setho watched in awe. "They've done it," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "They've broken the Vorath command structure." Team returned, exhausted, but alive. Behind them, the Vorath struggled to regroup. Confusion and fear rippled through their ranks. The humans didn't stop. They pressed the attack alongside alien forces, exploiting every weakness. Mines, traps, precise rifle fire, and relentless courage tore the Vorath advance apart. Behemoths fell to explosives at choke points. Siege engines collapsed under combined attacks. Even the Vorath's flying drones were shot down in swarms by human sharpshooters. By nightfall, the battlefield outside the city was a wasteland. The Vorath survivors limped back to their remaining spires, defeated and disoriented. Inside the walls, humans and alien defenders stood together, exhausted, battered, but victorious. The city had held. The siege, which had lasted for years, was finally